Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of Review Everything, the second show on this channel where I sit in a chair and just kind of talk. Hey, I let you come onto my show and you disrespect me? This is Review Everything episode 3. It's going to be about 2019 movies specifically. Going to cover everything I talked about in 2019. And this is Sadie Mae and she's a new character. The lighting's not great, but I don't want to shine a light directly on my dog. Unless she wants to bail. You want to fucking bail? You want to fucking bail, motherfucker? You're gonna leave my show? After one episode, you're gonna fucking quit? What kind of fucking co-host does that to me? Me. Yeah, that's right, motherfucker. Get back in your spot. See, PETA? I support the animals. Don't consider it like a legitimate list from worst to best, and consider it more of just a Review Everything episode of 2019 movies, because I saw 42 movies. Your Movie Sucks does a really good job, it just takes them a long time. If you want a really good top 10 list, you can watch his in like 4 years, 5 years, we'll say 5 years. It's closer to a 4 than a 6, but 5 years sounds about right. Until then, you can watch a bunch of other people just kind of talk about movies that came out this year, and maybe I'll recommend something that you like, or maybe I'll just reinforce an opinion you have, or maybe we'll go to fucking war. Maybe you're gonna fucking hate what I said. She left, so I'm gonna point the light better at that couch now. Anyways, let's review everything. Okay, so in dead last we have Lion King. I know this one's been hated on a lot, and it's just because it deserves it so much. It looks like there was some talented people who did the CG art, and I'm not denying that, but everyone's mentioned the expressions, and a lot of people say, oh, it's just the Lion King again, and the animation's really cool, but it's so expressionless. And that's a true statement, but people say that as if it's the only thing wrong with the movie, which it's everything is wrong with this movie. If this was a completely original movie, like the original Lion King did not exist, I think I would watch this and think it's kind of bad, but there's interesting ideas in it, because, you know, Circle of Life song is good. I like Be Prepared, even though they cut it down significantly in this movie. But it's just like every frame, every shot, every like delivery on a line, every piece of the score is a worse version of what's already out. So the entire time I'm watching this movie, you know, some people are being kind of forgiven of it. It's just saying, oh yeah, it was a remake, and it's, you know, it's not as good as the original, but it's still just watching Lion King again. If everything about it is inferior to the original, I just find that so frustrating, because the entire time I was like, why am I not just watching the original? The thing that really frustrated me about it is I watched it before watching The Lion King, like the original one, for like years. I was in high school last time I watched the original, and I loved the movie. And I was just thinking, this is the way I'm reintroducing myself back to this movie. This is the way I'm rewatching it, is just watching a shitty version of it. And I was like, am I even gonna want to watch the old one? And then I watched the old one a day later, and it's like, fuck yeah, this is still awesome. I don't care. It's like kind of like it's just a really rewatchable movie. It's probably the best Disney movie. I don't know that for sure if it's my favorite, but it's like top 2. I might be able to think of one that I like more, but nothing's coming to mind right now. So next up we have Always Be My Maybe. I would have never watched this if it wasn't recommended me by Zach on Duckcast, though to be fair, he is not the only one who recommended it to me. My good friend Chris also recommended me. So I'm going to say with their recommendations, there is an audience for this movie. I really hated it. I really hated the movie. I didn't really get anything out of it. There's one scene I liked, and I'll talk about that. But I just thought it was a really shitty comedy, and I like some stupid comedies, like That's My Boy and Hot Rod, so it doesn't surprise me too much that someone would think I would enjoy a movie like this. But I genuinely hated every second of this, and you know, it's a comedy, and it's relying heavily on the characters. It's not really trying to accomplish anything from a filmmaking perspective, but there is absolutely nothing from a technical perspective to admire. It's not like the audio is bad or the camera work is bad. It's just nothing. It's bland. But then there is a problem with the movie that actually does bring it down a lot to me, and I think that is that the two main characters, the couple, are extremely unlikable people, and they have a very toxic relationship throughout the entire movie, where absolutely nothing can set them off and start an argument, and the movie doesn't acknowledge it as if it's intentional. They're just actually two awful human beings and you're just supposed to accept it. Like, it's just like, yeah, no, but deep down they're good people, they're just confused. Even, like, when they get together in the movie, they have another stupid argument over absolutely fucking nothing. I hated it. I genuinely thought it was terrible. It gets a 2 out of 10 for me, because there's one scene that I did find funny, and that's they go to this restaurant, they use Keanu Reeves in the scene, because Keanu Reeves, haha, he's funny and popular now, so we're gonna use him. Every fucking Hollywood producer, everyone wants fucking Keanu Reeves and shit, and it actually works with some people. It's like fucking Ryan Reynolds. I mean, Keanu Reeves is a nice guy, and I like him in the John Wick movies, but like putting him in a movie does not make it better on its own. You have to get him to do something funny, and he's just not, he did nothing for me. What I did like is there's a scene where they're at this restaurant, and they have to put headphones on to listen to the death of the animal they're eating. And they're like just saying, I'm so sorry. And they're saying, thank you so much for your sacrifice as they're listening. And that was so bizarre and weird that I thought it was funny. Look at this freaking dog. And that did something for me. I liked that. So technically not the worst comedy I've ever seen. So needy. Next up is Godzilla King of Monsters. I'm sorry, Gage. Please don't be mad at me. Did not like this movie at all. I thought it was boring as hell. I was excited to see Mothra, and I did not like the design of Mothra. I kind of wish that we got like the old school Mothra, and I know it's kind of corny, it doesn't look realistic, and I get why they, you know, it wouldn't really fit this kind of movie, but I just think that old Mothra design is super uncanny, and I like it. And this new one was just kind of like, it was hard to see anything too, because the lighting in the movie is so weird. The only thing I remember story-wise is something to do with like a husband and wife's fucked up relationship. Or I guess they're like ex-husband and wife now. It's not really a spoiler, that's revealed at the very beginning. But yeah, I mean, if you like these monster movies, I wasn't that big on Kong Skull Island, I should say. I kind of want to watch the old school monster movies, because those are the ones that made people fall in love with them. But yeah, I did not enjoy Kong Skull Island either, but I did enjoy Kong Skull Island a lot more than this one, because I thought the monster stuff in that one was actually like well done and cool to look at. You got a lot of like really bright scenes, orange lighting. Some cool helicopter scenes. This movie just kind of felt like they hid everything with like really bad light, and then you'd see like lightning strike, and that was your main light source to see these monsters. Yeah, sorry Gage, I know that this was recommended by him, and we watched it together when he was visiting, but I did not like it, so sorry man. Next up we have Point Blank. This is just another remake of an action movie apparently on Netflix. At least it's either a remake or it's just the same name as like several other movies. I didn't like it. I watched it. I forget everything about it already. It was very boring. I made a tweet after I saw it. I think it was just in response to what someone else said, and I kind of made fun of it. And the director liked my tweet. So either he likes every single tweet that mentioned his movie, he knows it sucks, or he is going to find me and kill me. And my co-host, Sadie Mae. So, just saying, the director of this movie might be a dog killer. We don't know yet. I cannot deny or confirm that. Glass. I talked about this one twice already in great detail. You can watch those videos. I don't like it, but there's little things about it I like. The Laundromat. I thought this movie was boring. It was a genuine effort. There was some cool stuff done visually. There were some cool sets built. There were some interesting shots, but I really hated all of the characters. It literally ends with one of the characters taking off their costume and lecturing the audience. It becomes an anthology movie like an hour in, and then focuses like 20 minutes or even 10 minutes on the other two stories, then cuts back to the first story. Gary Oldman and who else? I don't even remember who the other person was. They played these two characters with these, just in my opinion, really annoying accents. And I hate to use the word annoying and just dismiss it like that. I wish I could go into more detail, but really I just did not find their characters likable, funny, or charming. And they can be bad people, but still have, like, personality. Like, I love Saul Goodman, and he's trash. I love BoJack Horseman, and he's trash. But, yeah, these two just had, like, no charisma at all, and it just kind of felt like they were like, hey, we're doing a voice, so that means we're interesting characters. To me, it was boring. Some people liked it. It was recommended to me. Some people liked it. There's an audience for this movie. It was a unique movie. They were trying to do something with it. I'll probably remember this one better than I remember something like Point Blank or Godzilla. Zombieland Double Tap. This movie is really lame. It's really lame, and there's some things to like about it, like Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg still have good chemistry together. I did still laugh at some of the stuff their characters said quite a bit, but it literally offers nothing new that the first one didn't give you. Like, the first one's not even a great movie. It's good. I like all four of the characters. Emma Stone and Abigail Breslin. What's her last name? I'm sorry about that, but I only know her from the first Zombieland. Emma Stone is like amazing in everything but this. I guess amazing Spider-Man. She's not great in either, but okay, two to everything else. But yeah, they gave Emma Stone nothing to do in this movie. It's not even that those two are bad. They just have nothing to do in this movie. The one kid is off screen almost the entire movie, yet she's still on the poster. And then Emma Stone's character leaves and comes back, but her whole dilemma is just Jesse Eisenberg proposed to her, and it's awkward. And it's because she doesn't trust him or doesn't want to trust him. And it's like, didn't you get over this in the first movie? Or at least weren't you in the process? And now it's been 10 years and it's still a fucking problem for you? What kind of character growth is that? That's horrible. That's so shitty. They add all these new characters that are just like one joke. Like there's this Valley girl and then there's this hipster dude. And it's just like, yeah, think of hipster jokes. Think of dumb blonde jokes. That's what you get with those two exclusively. They add a love interest in for Woody Harrelson's character. None of the segments are as funny as anything in the first one, but I did kind of like seeing Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg's characters come back and talk with each other, because I like those two characters and I like their dynamic, and I felt like that dynamic was still alive in this movie. Everything else about it was worse than the first Zombieland. And even them were worse, but just still enjoyable. Though, to be fair, I watched it with my sister and father, who both loved the first one, and they both loved this one too. So that is my opinion alone, and there are some people that did like Double Tap. I like to give movies credit because I don't want to act like my opinion's the only one that matters. So if I know someone who liked it, I'll point it out even if I hated it. Double Tap, I thought it was fucking lame, but there's an audience for it. Some people like it. Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm not the biggest Marvel movie fan. Most of the time I find them to be kind of boring, but I did normally like the Avengers movies. I did like Thor Ragnarok. I did like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And I honestly really get a kick out of the Spider-Man films, even though there's not that many new ones. I mean, I don't really count the Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't watch them. I only know that people don't like them. The original Sam Raimi trilogy is really great. I like the first two movies, and then the third one's funny. Like, unintentionally funny, but still, it's great. And then Homecoming was good. I enjoyed Homecoming. It's a simple movie, but I enjoyed that. Spider-Verse was fucking outstanding. It is my favorite Marvel movie even to this day, better than Infinity War and Endgame. And I enjoy his appearances in Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. Far From Home, to me, was the first really boring Spider-Man movie that I've seen. And this was the first one that I just felt like there was nothing in it for me. And there, I hear some people who were really big fans of what they did with Mysterios. I actually wasn't even familiar with that character. I know Spider-Man exclusively from video games and movies, and I haven't seen all of it. I haven't played all the games, so I'm not familiar with Mysterios. This is his first appearance in a movie, I believe. I heard he was done justice, and Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job. I really like Tom Holland and Zendaya's chemistry in this movie. They're very awkward high school students, and it's pulled off very well. It was very believable to me. I didn't feel like any of the other kids really added anything to it. I wasn't that into the story of the film. I love the mid-credits scene for obvious reasons. If anyone saw it, they know why. And I really love the open, and it does the same thing that the Homecoming did, where it's like an amateur filmmaking open. And the first movie, it was Peter Parker doing a documentary on his phone camera or whatever. And now this one is a school news segment where they acknowledge the events of Endgame in a hilarious way. So there's definitely things about this movie I enjoyed, but most of it I was very bored with. I just don't think it really did anything for me. It's a very small scale. So was Homecoming, but I felt like Homecoming just kind of nailed the small scale of it. This one was just, it kind of felt like Lifetime movie-ish to me at points in this movie. And there was nothing fun about the cinematography. I even remember the first Homecoming movie. I feel like that one had pretty charming scenes, pretty enjoyable cinematography, him trying to pull the boat back together, him just kind of goofing off in the opening with his Spider-Man powers. I think there was some unique things with the filmmaking and the shots in the first one, despite what others would say. But she doesn't like me shit-talking Spider-Man Far From Home. That was her favorite movie of 2020. So really, it's just it's not bad. It didn't do a lot for me. I was kind of bored, but I get the appeal of it. Toy Story 4, I love the way the movie looks. I kind of like the beginning of the movie. But I disagree with people who said, oh, it was uncalled for, but they did something really good with it at least. Because I did not feel that way about it at all. Like, yeah, the ending is technically trying to move things forward in a different way. It's kind of given a different close into the series that the third one did. But the third one was a great way to go out. And even though I wouldn't say the third one's as good as the first two, it's a good movie. This one, I thought, like, it had an interesting setup, and then it slowly became boring. It's just, like, a lot of bad running jokes. I get Woody's dilemma. I get what they're trying to do. It doesn't feel completely void of effort, but for the most part, the way this movie worked is some people loved it and some people thought it was like really boring and unnecessary. I feel like the same thing happened with Toy Story 3, but it's just like where Toy Story 3 was like 90 or 95% of people who watched it loved it, and then there was like a 10% that didn't like it. And with this one, it's like kind of split a little more. I would still say more people liked it than people who disliked it, but I'd say we're like 70 to 30 now, or 60 to 40. It definitely heard a lot more criticisms against this movie. See, Toy Story 4, not great in my opinion. I thought Disney actually was really boring this year, Endgame being the only decent thing from them that I saw. Detective Pikachu. I really do like the aesthetic of seeing these uncanny 3D models of the Pokemon, trying to make them look realistic, and some of them I actually do think are kind of cute, and then some of them are kind of horrifying, but I feel like if Pokemon were real, that'd be the case. I wanted to see a giant Beedrill, because that would have been fucking terrifying for me. Gengar and Charizard are the only two that I thought looked like really bad, and I thought the rest of them were actually kind of nice to look at. Pikachu, obviously, they put the most effort into because he's on screen the most. They need to make him look cute. They pulled it off. I thought Pikachu was adorable. Psyduck looks super uncanny, but I was honestly fine with his design. Bulbasaur looked cool. Mewtwo, there's a few shots where it looks a little weird, but most of the time it's really cool. And then the human characters suck, and the story isn't great, and I really don't like Ryan Reynolds' comedy. He seems like a nice enough person. But I have friends that get really shocked and be like, Michael, you don't like Ryan Reynolds? I like Deadpool 1 and 2, and that was my first exposure to Ryan Reynolds. And now I'm realizing it's just like all of his movies are the same bit, and Detective Pikachu feels that way too, just minus actually seeing Ryan Reynolds. Now it's just his voice. But Detective Pikachu, sadly, is just a Ryan Reynolds comedy. And I think anything with the writing and the characters is just really bland because of that. It's just something I've seen before, but now kind of more child-friendly. The only thing I really liked about this movie was seeing the live-action Pokemon, but there's a lot of that. I think there is some really cool stuff about this movie visually. And there's some like cool chase sequences. There's some cool ideas in it. I actually do think visually it's an interesting movie. But I really don't like any of the characters, any of the jokes, really any of that at all. I just think in terms of visuals, they did a better job. Like the Sonic movie recently came out, and I didn't see that yet, but I've seen a lot of footage, and it feels like Sonic himself is the only thing Sonic related in the movie. While Pokemon, there's a shitload of stuff. The cities look like something you'd see in a Pokemon movie. There's Pokemon everywhere. They filled the scenes out. There was a shitload of effort put into it, and I admire it, but I definitely will not watch it a second time because now I've kind of seen it. If I want to see it again, I'll just look up Google Images or watch the trailer again because now I know what live-action Pokemon look like. And then a lot of people are like, oh, why not just make an animated movie? I asked that for fucking Sonic, but Pokemon, there's been so many anime movies. Let's do a weird live-action movie. Why not? That's awesome. I'm glad this exists. But it is a pretty boring movie when you look at it from like a character perspective and a story perspective. And, you know, it doesn't have to be. Pokemon's stupid, but I think the first two movies, the first three really, have like interesting enough stories. They're stupid and it's for kids, but so is Detective Pikachu. And I would still say those three have way better stories despite being really stupid. This movie's stupid and it's bad. But again, aesthetically, I think there is something to really enjoy about it. It's not the first movie that takes cartoon characters and makes them live action, but it is the first time we got to see live action Pokemon. And if you're a Pokemon fan or grew up as a Pokemon fan, it's cool. I think it's cool. It's not great, but it's cool. It doesn't suck. But I do not like anything else about it, as I've stated many times before. Let's move on. The Lego Movie 2. I feel like this movie had some real pacing problems near the beginning. I like the second half a lot more than the first half. I just didn't really get into the characters the same way I did in the first one. I think the message is a lot more simplistic than what the first one was offering. Like the first one was something really unique. And this one's more specific to siblings, like sibling relationships. But if you want to like Okay, you can expand it a little bit. You can say it's just about accepting others or being kind towards each other. You can, like, widen it a little bit, because, you know, obviously everyone watching this doesn't have, like, a little sister. But I think even if you give it credit for more than that, it's just a simplistic message. It's something that's been done a million times, whereas the first Lego movie really felt like it did something unique and took on something that I haven't really seen a lot of children's movies do. The first Lego movie is such a standout movie and it's such a surprise. Well, this one wasn't a surprise at all. I was like, yeah, this is going to be a mediocre sequel, isn't it? And it was a little worse than I thought it was going to be because I wasn't expecting some of the pacing issues. I just feel like so much is going on in that first hour and it doesn't seem focused on anything and it doesn't really seem to be sure of what it wants to pull off. And then like the last hour, it's a lot better. It's not even like a full 2-hour movie, so it's not even like the last hour. I don't remember exactly the time code on when the movie started becoming enjoyable for me. But it's probably around the time that Bennett meets the new character in this movie, and the others are like maybe right after the Queen Whatever Wannabe song, which is my favorite part of the movie because I genuinely loved that song. I thought it was catchy as hell. I thought the other songs were very forgettable. It's just kind of another one of those weird movies where it's not really a musical. There's just like 5 songs in it. It's not bad. It's well animated. There's some funny parts in it. But as a follow-up to the Lego movie, it's very underwhelming. It's kind of like the same effect as like Double Tap because, you know, the first Zombieland was just a decent movie, the second one's bad. The first Lego movie was a really awesome movie and the sequel's just kind of okay. It's not bad, it's not great. I'll rewatch the first one a bunch of times. I never want to watch the Lego movie 2 again. Alita Battle Angel. I'm sorry, Tim, please don't be mad at me. Okay, you know what? Fuck you, Tim. 6 out of 10 is a good score. I'm sorry. Here we make it to the good movies. These are the movies that I'm like, yeah, that was a good movie. That was good. Anyway, so Alita Battle Angel. I did enjoy this movie. From a visual perspective, it's awesome. I love the chase sequences. The fight scenes are really cool. Visually, it's just an excellent movie. It's a lot of fun. I wish I would have seen it in theaters, and I probably would have enjoyed it more if I saw it in theaters. Lots of fun. Lots of fun to watch. My problem with the movie mainly comes from how many characters it has, and it's again kind of a pacing thing, like the Lego movie, just for different reasons. With this movie, it's just like, there's so many characters they want to focus on. So you'll have like different characters throughout the movie and they'll cut away from like the main character, like Alita and the doctor character, to focus on this boy she's interested in and this ex-wife of the doctor's character and this villain. And there's just so much shit going on in it that I actually feel like it distracts from what could be a more clear narrative. It almost feels like this movie would work better as a TV series where you could like focus on all these characters and you wouldn't be like restricted to a 2-hour limit, because really it just feels like if you're going to have this many characters, you want to give them smaller parts. It feels like Alita's like love interest is treated as just as important to the film's story as Alita is, and that means we're sharing a lot of screen time, and the movie's wanting us to really, like, the movie wants these characters to grow on us really quickly, when in reality for me, and I know this isn't the case of a lot of people because this movie has quite a fan base, but for me, I really only ended it liking Alita and the Doctor character. I felt like there were some really charming scenes with those two, and I ended up liking them a lot as characters. The boyfriend did nothing for me. The ex-wife did nothing for me. None of the villains did anything for me. I think there are characters in this movie that I literally forgot existed. And I just kind of wish that we would focus on these two characters that I did like. And then the other characters, they can be there too, but don't cut away that long from the main characters. But it genuinely felt like they were just pulling off way too much shit at once. And it started to, it got old for me really quick. I know it's kind of ironic that I say it should, like, it could have been a TV show since it actually is based on a TV show. I know that there's supposed to be a sequel. There's definitely a sequel in mind, and, you know, maybe the sequel will be better. I enjoyed it. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I would have liked to. It Chapter 2. This movie kind of suffers from the same thing that Alita Battle Angel does, but I actually think it works because we have that first movie. That first movie treats it as an ensemble movie, like all the kids are together, and we get to know them, and we know what they're like. And now we have this sequel that comes out where the first hour is them reuniting, and they spend the first hour of the movie together. Now they're adults, and then they all get separated And I actually think it works a lot better in this movie. A lot of people complained about the 1 hour where they're all separated, saying it just like dragged the film on, but I liked them kind of going back to like kind of confront their demons. I felt like it was a very interesting character study for most of them, and I was into it. I think it's the last act of this movie that's boring as fuck when they face off with Pennywise. Like, it got super generic for me. It got super boring for me. I didn't care for the ending of this movie, like, at all. To me, it just offered nothing new to the experience whatsoever. I think the cool thing about it is exploring all these individual fears, all these individual like inner demons. And I know that might not, I never read the book. I only have the old miniseries in this movie, these 2 movies to go off of. But I think most of it's pulled off fairly well. I know a lot of people didn't like this one as much as the first one, and I agree with that. The first one's much, much better. But there's something to enjoy about this one. I actually think Bill Hader completely knocked it out of the park. He was great. But yeah, that last act dragged on for me and I was not into it. A good movie, but not a great one. Like the first one is. I would consider the first It movie a great movie. Hammer Boys, talked about this one twice. I'll link the videos. Tell Me Who I Am. This one's awkward to rank because it's a documentary. I'm essentially, when I rank something like this, I'm not going to like rank it based off the people in it or the story being told. I'm going to rank it more on how the documentary was made, if it kept my interest, if there was like stuff that could have been cut out in my opinion. The 2 brothers, it's a documentary about 2 brothers. One of them lost their memory, and this is real. This is very real. And the one brother kind of lied to him about his past and who he was before he lost his memory, because it was a very hurtful truth. It wasn't something that he wanted his brother to have to relive or learn the truth of. And you kind of get both of their perspectives on this, and it's interesting. It's very, very interesting, and both of them are very interesting people to listen to, and it's a really tragic story to hear. And, you know, it's kind of up there with something like The Wolf Pack or Dear Zachary, where it's a very personal documentary, and it's very much like something that's going to make you uncomfortable to watch. This might not be the kind of thing that you enjoy watching at all. It's not fiction. It's very real. I'm okay with feeling negative emotions when watching stuff. I'm okay with listening to someone's hard story. I think we all want to be listened to some extent, and I think it's good to watch stuff like this, even though it will make you feel things that you don't necessarily want to feel. To me, the only thing that sets this one back from the other 2 documentaries that I saw, or any other personal documentary that I love, where it's not talking about like a historical event or anything, it's talking about like just an individual or a couple of individuals like horrible experience with something, is that I think there's pattern to it. When you watch the Netflix trailer, you almost get everything out of it that you need. This did not need to be as long as it was, and it's not that long of a documentary. And I don't blame the people being interviewed. I don't blame them. I think there is some really good calls. Like, those 2 are the only 2 you hear get interviewed. And it's just kind of going back and forth between them up until they meet up at the end. And all that's really clever. But I feel like the film consistently repeats itself. Like, this could have easily been a short film. This did not need to be an hour and 30 minutes. The person who made this did a good job, but he didn't do an amazing job because he dragged some of it out way too long, and it did not need to be a feature film. It really didn't. I understand how a story like this is tempting to make into a feature film. I don't think it needed to be. Again, you okay, girl? You having a bad dream? Again, it is super weird to review something like this and give it a ranking, but I have to be honest, that was my experience with watching the documentary. I would still recommend it. And tell me if you agree with me or not. But I wish there was like a cut down version of it, because I do feel like the 2 people in it repeat themselves in certain things more than once, which is understandable. That's what we do as human beings. When we're talking about stuff, we often do say the same things over and over again. But as an editor, you need to know how to cut out what doesn't need to be there. Next up, we have Full Force. Feel like an even bigger asshole for ranking this one higher. To me, this is a better documentary on a way sillier subject. This is just taking a look at the life of a YouTuber who's mainly not even known for his YouTube channel, mainly known for like meme compilations, Airsoft Fatty, who, you know, there's like the Star Wars clips that you can find online with him in it. And it is a very enjoyable look at this person's life. Just go through his house, hear what he has to say about his life. I don't know, it's like, it's not something that you would suspect to be interested in, but they knew how to cut the fat. They knew to make it a short film and not a feature-length film. This is one of those stretches I was talking about. And there's a lot of charm to it. Ian does a good job interacting with them. I would say iDubbbz's inclusion in the documentary makes it feel more like a YouTube video than a legitimate film. But I'm going to give a pass on that because it's done extremely well and he does add something to the documentary. Maybe pick a better background if you're trying to make it look like an actual film, like a little short film. I don't think that's what he's trying to do, but like, you know, your editing room wall or bedroom wall, not a great backdrop from when you're interviewing yourself or giving your commentary on what's going on. Almost would be better just giving a voiceover and putting like B-roll that you got from hanging out with Fatty. With the way it was all put together, I would say the documentary is very humorous, but also fairly tasteful. There's some people who said that they're jerks for doing this, and I don't agree with that, but there's like clearly cases of him making fun of Fatty and other people in the documentary. But also, I feel like at the end of the day, when you watch the whole thing, it's respectful enough. I think this documentary did more good for him than bad for him, and I think that's all that really matters. I would love to see Ian do more stuff like this. I like the content cops he does. I like the other videos he does. But this is the shit that's like memorable. This is the shit that like stayed in my head long enough to where I added it to my list of movies I wanted to talk about this year and count it as a legitimate movie because hey, it's an interesting little look at something really simple. It's something that no one's done yet, so kudos. It's well made. Rocko's Modern Life, Aesthetic Cling, another stretch. This one was kind of a TV special rather than a movie, but hey, it's the first look we got at Rocko in years. I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a good representation of what the show was, and it was also a very clever way to kind of like take the show, the fact that it's supposed to focus on modern life, but it's also a show that was from the 90s, so making fun of nostalgia, making fun of like not wanting things to change is kind of a very relevant topic to choose for a Rocko's Modern Life special, like in 2019. And there's also something kind of ironic about it. I think it's clever. Rocko himself, I would agree, seems a little too, like he's a little bit of a jerk in a lot of this, and I don't think they meant for him to come off that way, but he does. I would say he's like the biggest thing to criticize about this special, but it's not like he's bad throughout the whole thing, just big chunks of it. There's parts where good old Rocko is still there. He's just someone who's really bothered by the changes, and then there's a very quick and abrupt resolution for him. And it's a little weird for sure, but I think they pretty much nailed everything else. Yes, it's a little dated to do jokes about, oh, look at us on our cell phones, or make energy drink jokes. So there is one funny energy drink joke where they use it as batteries. I thought that was funny. But that stuff is a little lame. But for the most part, it was an enjoyable special, in my opinion. Dolemite Is My Name. I think Eddie Murphy is very likable in this movie. I think his character is very charming. There's also some good sense of humor there. It's definitely the most I've enjoyed of anything he's done in a long time. I think that the first hour is a little boring. It's like I was definitely enjoying it enough to where I kept watching, but I was like, yeah, this is like, I was watching like, I guess I'll keep watching this. It's something to do, but I'm not loving it. And then the second half of it, when they actually start making the Dolemite movie, that is like a way better version of The Disaster Artist. That was a lot of fun to watch. There's like a great chemistry on set between everyone working on it. It's a lot of fun, and I love how it ends with the reaction. I think the ending actually has a lot to say about like knowing your audience, and it's a better way to talk down to criticism, because it's not really saying fuck the critics. It's more just like, you know, just because a certain group of people don't like something doesn't mean that it's actually an invalid form of entertainment. It doesn't mean it's any less valid than anything else. I feel like it's a good approach. It's not like quite as good as the Ratatouille version of this, but it's a lot better than, example, iCarly did an episode on criticism, and they did it fucking poorly. So if you remember that, that's a very vague and random thing to bring up, but if you remember that one, it was better than that. I like Dolemite Is My Name. I might even watch it a second time. Might skim through the first hour, but the rest of it's pretty great. John Wick 3. I like John Wick movies. I mentioned them before with Keanu Reeves. That's like the one thing he does right now that I actually like. The first one's still my favorite because I feel like it is the most simple plot, but also the most original plot. Like the second and third movie, they try to expand the universe. They try to add all these new conflicts. And that's where it actually starts to feel kind of cliche to me. The guy's motive being his dog died, and he wants to fuck up the person who did that. That's great. I haven't seen an action movie that did that as like the main motivation for this insane action hero, like one of the most notable action heroes or anti-heroes in a really long time. And it's perfect. It's perfect. The way that they talk about him, the way they fear him, the dialogue in the first John Wick movie is so great. The second one, I think, has a lot of boring shit in there, and I wasn't as into it, though I do like a lot of it. There's parts of it that are really fun. And the third movie, it does try to make the plot more complicated than I think it needs to be. It's not like a super complicated plot or anything. It's still a stupid plot, but it's still kind of cliched. But it's a lot of fun. It kind of keeps things fun throughout the whole movie. All the action scenes are really well done. It definitely was more enjoyable than the second one for me. First one's still absolutely my favorite, but this one was good too. Rocket Man. A lot of people will compare this to Bohemian Rhapsody, and rightfully so. It's a biopic about a musician, and it's a lot better than fucking Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, a lot better. The musical segments are not just like them sitting in a recording booth and talking about what band members added this to that, or them on a stage, and you see magazines or newspapers scroll past the scenes, like roll past the screen of what they've accomplished. Fucking Rocket Man takes a very good approach where it's like Elton John in rehab, and not a spoiler, that's the very beginning of the movie. And every single song is just him recalling something from his past, and they create this really cool dreamlike sequence for all of them, and it's like a legitimate musical. And it's a lot of fun to watch. They take a different approach with the Elton John songs. They allow the actor to sing the songs, and they don't just try to make it sound identical to Elton John like Bohemian Rhapsody did with Freddie Mercury. But it still sounds close enough to where you can accept it for what it is. You can accept what it's doing. There are a lot of cliches that you get in a lot of the biopic movies. You have to learn about some abusive relationship he was in. You have to focus on a lot of characters that you don't give two shits about. But from a music point and a visual point, it's awesome. I mean, it's actually awesome the entire way through. And there are some sequences in this movie that I absolutely love. The best one, in my opinion, being the Rocket Man sequence. I love how they did that. I thought the entire thing looked awesome. It was just one of those points where I was watching this movie, I was already into it, and I'm like, yes, this is great. This is awesome. And it doesn't hold up that well throughout the entire thing, but it's consistent enough to where I would definitely recommend Rocket Man. Avengers Endgame, I liked it. I think it was better the first time I watched it. And then the second time, it really is just that last hour. The first 2 hours are good too. The thing is, like the first two acts, like the first act is what happened after Infinity War. The second act is time travel, and then the third act is the big climax. And the big climax is really fun, and everything about that is great. For a Marvel movie, that's really all I'm looking for. The first act I loved when I saw it in theaters. I thought it was just like, it was really depressing, but it was like, man, I know all these characters, I feel for them, and I like jumping back and forth, and I like, even though, Paul Rudd isn't like an amazing actor or anything, I like his character in the Marvel. I think his character blends in well with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I like seeing him kind of finally get a chance to interact with all these people. You get a little bit of that in Civil War, but not a ton, so I enjoyed that. And I just enjoyed how, depressing it was. Yeah, I mean, it was just legitimately depressing, and I liked that. There was some humor in it, too. The second time around, I didn't really like that first act as much. There were parts of it that I did like, but it also feels like it drags on way longer than it needs to. Both time I watched it, I did not really care for how long the time travel shit went on, but there's cool moments. There's with Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, I feel like there actually is a lot of, they're kind of confronting their demons, they're kind of confronting their past, they both grow because of it, and stuff like that I really enjoy. And then there's some other parts that I don't enjoy as much. Some of the stuff with them going back to the first Avengers movie was kind of fun, but all the other places they go back to aren't nearly as much fun. And then the final act is just something to remember. The feeling I had when watching that in theaters was such a kick, and I will always appreciate it for that. I also think the score is surprisingly really good. Most Marvel movies do not have great scores. This one, I've been listening to the music since the day I saw it. I'm still listening to it. It's almost been a whole year, and I still listen to that freaking score. because it's just like one of the coolest things. Not all the tracks, it's not like perfect, it's not one of the best film scores I've ever heard, but a lot of it does hold up for me. Portals and The Real Hero being the two best ones. Granted, both of those are at the end, but they're not the only good ones. There's a lot of good stuff in this movie. So yeah, it's a good one. I like it. The Woodstock documentary. I think this is like CBS or NBC, maybe ABC, I don't remember. But it's on Netflix. And maybe if I actually knew anything about Woodstock before watching this documentary, I would not feel this highly about it. But I really didn't know that much about it. I know what the event was, obviously. Everyone does. But I never really learned too much about it outside of like history class in high school or middle school or whenever we learned about Woodstock. This documentary gave a lot of details. That like there was this group of people they brought on as security. Forget what their names were, but I'll put it up on the screen. And we get to learn about them, and they're very likable people, and you learn about what they did, and you learn about like how they prepared for people having taken something they weren't ready for and having bad trips. And I thought that was very interesting to learn about. There's all these details that you learn about, and the documentary has a very clever way of presenting itself. It kind of takes the Amy approach, where you never see the people being interviewed. There's so much stock footage, so much B-roll that they can show, so much great footage they can show that they never need to cut away from the event itself. They can just have the people being interviewed just use the audio. And I thought that was great. It definitely was the right way to go with this documentary. It definitely made it so you could really get as much out of it as you possibly could. And yeah, I was talking about this documentary with other people. We had a lot to say about it. It was just a great learning experience. And again, maybe there's better Woodstock documentaries out there, but in terms of just wanting to watch something, to learn about something, this was very solid. I would recommend it if you're interested on the subject. Shazam! I liked Shazam a lot. And I didn't think I would when I heard that it was coming out. It's a DC movie. I never really watched them. I don't have the same hatred that other people do for them. I like the Dark Knight trilogy like a lot of people do, but I didn't even watch, I think I watched Man of Steel years ago and didn't like it. But I didn't watch Batman v Superman, I didn't watch Suicide Squad, Justice League, any of that shit. Not even Wonder Woman, which some people really liked. I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to watch any DC movies. Then I ended up watching the 2 DC movies that come out this year. I will say for a while, I was debating on whether I liked Shazam or Joker more. And I eventually decided that, yeah, I like Joker more. Spoiler for something that's going to be on the list later, but it's not like it's in my top 10 or anything. But I did have to think about it for a minute. I think with Shazam, there are things about it that are kind of bland, that are kind of dull, but mainly you just got these 2 kids, one of them who can turn into a superhero because of the powers he gets through the movie, and you just see how 2 kids would deal with this kind of power, and that's fun. That was enjoyable to watch. There's a lot of good comedy, there's some really heartfelt moments. The backstory for Shazam himself is a different one that I have not seen pulled off before. From a filmmaking perspective, there's a lot to appreciate. There's this really creepy scene in an office where people are just being pushed against this window. And it's there's shots that really stick with me. It's a ridiculous movie. It does not care about how stupid the premise is. It just accepts the premise for what it is, has fun with it, does not try to make any sense of it. And it's perfect for that. A lot of great comedy, a lot of very likable families. The entire Foster family, especially the parents, so fucking likable in this movie. Just a really great cast. The villain, nothing special, but he works very well for the film. Wish maybe they could have given us a little bit more with him, potentially. But yeah, aside from that, it's not a masterpiece, but it is the most charming superhero movie I saw all year. And I like it more than fucking Endgame. I'll go as far as to say that. Still, Joker, I don't even know if you want to count Joker as a superhero movie or a comic book movie. I kind of do, though people argue with me when I do that. But yeah, Shazam was very close to my favorite this year of all the superhero stuff that came out, so kudos to them. That was awesome. Breaking Bad, El Camino. I talked about this one 3 times. Just watch those videos. Fyre. This is the anti-Woodstock documentary. In the Woodstock documentary, you saw how it was just this event where both the people who were holding it and the people who attended it were such genuine, great people. And even though there was a lack of supplies for certain things, they all banded together. The town, the people attending the concert, the people running the concert, just the festival or tour, whatever you want to call it, just banded together and just made it this great event, this monumental event that will be remembered forever. While Fyre Fest was ran by terrible people and the people who attended were a bunch of rich kids, which, you know, they're victims of something. A lot of people, like, will just say, if you attended Fyre Festival, fuck you. Like, it's surprising how unsympathetic people are in the comments for, like, YouTube videos of people who actually attended Fyre Fest. I watched those YouTube vlogs because I knew they existed when I'm watching, right after watching the documentary. And it's just people are super unsympathetic towards them. And I get it. They're just a bunch of rich kids, and I get being unsympathetic towards them. But it still sucks. It still sucks to be put in a situation like that. Like, no one was going to die or anything. It wasn't like... I seriously doubt it was as horrifying as the documentary painted it. You could, you know, calm the hell down a little bit. Like, it's not the worst thing that's ever been captured on a documentary before. It's not, like, the most horrifying story, but it's... sucks, I don't know. But still, it is a huge difference in between the attendees and the people running it. This documentary is so well put together, it's so interesting. The reason I think it's so good is because it actually has people who are involved in the event making the documentary. You get a really good personal perspective on the event, and it's just so interesting, nonstop. My only issue with the documentary, and this might be a little controversial, so if you disagree with me, please explain why, because I would actually, like, if I'm being an asshole here, I want to know if I'm being an asshole. But from what I watched, it really felt like, not everyone, but some of the people being interviewed talking against Fyre Festival were largely responsible for the stuff that happened and weren't the guiltiest party by any means. And again, some of the people being interviewed I think are completely innocent, but kind of felt like some of these people let a lot of this bullshit happen without saying anything. I understand there could have been a contract or something, but if they were legitimately worried that someone might die attending this event, I think I'd break a contract at that point. I don't know, man. It's weird. It seems like a lot of these people being interviewed are talking about how disgusted they are, even though they openly admit they were involved at the point they were disgusted with it, and they kept doing what people told them to do. So, like, were they tricked into doing this documentary? I think that they made the documentary. Yeah, I don't know. It rubbed a lot of the people being interviewed rubbed me the wrong way. That's all I'm saying. I relocated. I feel gross right now. I probably look gross right now. We're just gonna put a little sensor over the screen. Okay, so Klaus. Klaus was a very cute movie. It was animated very well. I think when it comes to Christmas movies, I liked a lot of them when I was a kid. And nowadays, there's not that many I can actually say I enjoy anymore. I like a lot of TV holiday specials, but not so much movies. This one kind of adds one to the list that I could actually see myself turning on next year, because it's just such a nice thing to look at. And I do like the characters, and I think that there is a lot of sappiness to it, but I also think it goes more adult than I'll see a lot of these animated children's Christmas movies go. It definitely had some bittersweet moments in it, and a very touching ending. But it does follow a lot of generic storytelling. I think that it has enough to make up for it, though, with the style and the characters and really everything. Paddleton. I actually already talked about this one in an episode of Review Everything. I enjoyed a lot. Steven Universe, the movie. Definitely not a movie that you could watch without the show. I feel like it's just a fan service movie. But I mean that... I don't really mean that in a bad way. That might sound bad. I did really enjoy the movie. It's just a movie that recaps so much stuff that happened on the show, but kind of in a unique way, kind of in a creative way that's very enjoyable for longtime fans of the shows. I'd say the song Independent Together, for example, has like this sequence that you would have to watch the show to understand what's happening, but if you're a fan of the show, you're really going to love it. The villain is probably the best part of the movie. It's also the one character that kind of makes it feel like a movie, animation-wise. The animation style of the movie looks like a TV movie, which it was. It doesn't have better-looking animation than the show. And, you know, I understand they did what they could, and there were some very talented people who worked on this movie. My ideal vision of a TV show becoming an animated movie would be the animation gets a upgrade. And that's not really the case here. It looks just like the show, but there are a few scenes where they, like, clearly put in, like, a little bit of extra work to make it look a little smoother. And the villain is very expressive, and there's all kinds of crazy movement with her, and that's kind of where it starts to feel like something that wouldn't be on the show. So I wouldn't say the entire movie looks like a movie. A lot of it just looks like an episode of the show, but there's little things that definitely make it feel more cinematic, more grand. And I would say the villain is probably one of the most interesting characters in the show. She has definitely become a fan favorite to a lot of people, and that is with significantly less screen time than some of the others. They just made her very sympathetic, and her motives were very understandable, and I think a lot of people connected with it. I did enjoy the character quite a bit, and I didn't think I was going to when I first started watching. I love what they do with the music. The soundtrack in this movie is excellent. Whenever they have this like villain on the screen who's kind of like a entertainer, it's like kind of like a circus act, and also uses older styles of animation. They have like this circus music playing with her, like it'll be incorporated into a lot of the songs, and it's like really creepy and unsettling, but it sounds so good. There was one song in the entire movie that I didn't like. This isn't especially music that I'm listening to too often after watching the movie, but I would say it's good. I would say they're very well written songs and they're enjoyable to listen to. The only one I don't like is Sadie's song, and it's not even like I get what they're doing with it. It's just I don't like her singing voice at all. But aside from that, yeah, it's a good movie. If you're not a fan of the show, don't bother, obviously. But if you're a fan and you haven't seen it yet, it's good. I guess that's all I have to say about it. I enjoyed it. Joker. I do enjoy this movie. I've watched it twice, and the second time I was wondering if my opinion on it was going to change. That seems to happen with a couple of people who watch it. No, I still enjoyed it after the second time. I think it gets a little too much credit. Maybe that's because a lot of the people who are praising it are, and I'm not saying this for sure, but I think a lot of them are comic book movie fans who don't watch a lot of cinema, which is fine, but they do enjoy the comic book movies, and this was something different for a comic book movie. At least I've never seen anything done like this in a comic film. The closest thing I could even say that I've seen to it is Unbreakable, and that's just like because it's an origin story for something and it's questioning one's purpose in the world. But Unbreakable is a way better movie, but this isn't trying to be anything like Unbreakable, so it's not a fair comparison. Yeah, it's just it's good. I like the soundtrack selection. The score was nothing special. I don't really know why it won Best Score at the Oscars. The performance from Joaquin Phoenix was incredible. Everyone has said that. I think it's actually a surprisingly well-shot movie, especially considering who the director is. The director isn't really known for making really cinematic films, to each their own. He makes the Hangover movies, he made Old School with Will Ferrell, and it's like, that's fine. I don't really have anything against those movies too much, but it was just impressive to see some of these shots in this film. It's not like the entire thing is a masterpiece, like it's not amazing cinematography, but it's pretty good all the way throughout. And I was surprised to see that from this director, knowing what his other work is. I'll definitely give him credit for that. I understand there's a director of photography, but still, this was his project. He was the one kind of pulling the strings of the whole thing. I think he did a good job with it. Ultimately, I think it's a worse version of movies that already exist, but it's doing enough of its own thing to where it's not just like The Lion King again, where it's distracting. I enjoyed watching this movie separately from something like Taxi Driver or King of Comedy, or another comparison I actually hear is American Psycho. And American Psycho I don't entirely agree with. I guess similar themes maybe, but very different stories, very different approaches. But yeah, I don't think it's bad. I think it's not really a Batman movie. So if you want that, you're probably not going to like it, but it's not great, not bad. I like it. I Lost My Body. This is probably what should have one of the nominations for Best Animated Film. I know Toy Story 4 got it because of course Toy Story 4 would get it. This movie was very unique. It took a very unique style of animation. It was just like rotoscoping, but I don't think I've ever seen a feature film of this. And rotoscoping is often something I associate with, no offense, because I love these videos, but like kind of cheap YouTube animation, like the Filthy Frank anime openings, which again, love them, super talented guy. Don't necessarily want to watch a whole movie of that style though, but this movie definitely made it work. This movie is very appealing to look at the entire time. It looks like a little sloppy at times, but you almost kind of, I don't know, just with how expressive it is, like, and just like some of the movement that it's able to capture, I actually really don't take issue with the way it looks at all. It's a very strange story, and it's very clear that it's going to be a strange story from the very beginning. It's more of an experience than a very clear narrative, though. I mean, there is kind of a clear narrative going on. It's not like tons of metaphors and no plot at all, but it is weird. It is definitely weird. But I love the way it looks. I like the characters a lot. I like the score. It's definitely something that stands out from other animated films, and I would recommend it. It's not my favorite animated movie of the year, but it is my favorite animated movie of the nominations at the Oscars this year. Next up, we actually have my favorite animated movie of the year, which is Enter the Florpus, the Invader Zim movie. There is a little bit of a bias here because I am a fan of the original series, but again, just like looking at this as what it is, an adaptation of a TV show, they fucking nailed it. The animation style is a little different, the color scheme is a little different, and just some of the animations at some points they kind of use cheaper animation. I get it, you know, cheap out in some areas so other parts can be great. Whenever it shows the two tallest, it's like character rigging basically, and it's very very noticeable to me. But you know, if you have to save some money and do it in one scene, that's the perfect scene to do it, so I really don't have any strong problems there with that. But when it comes to the writing and the characters and the sense of humor, this was perfect. This is exactly what I wanted out of a movie like this. I'd say like maybe the first 30 minutes has weird pace, and the first time I watched it I was kind of disappointed. Until we made it past those first 30 minutes, then it got great. And then when I rewatched it, the first 30 minutes didn't bug me that much. I guess it's just like a little bit of me being impatient the first time I watched it. I wasn't sure where they were going with it within those first 30 minutes because it just kind of felt like it was just scene after scene of stuff that doesn't really connect. And some, you know, like the scene with Gur grabbing out a bunch of stuff that, because Zim is trying to remember what his plan was, and Gur is grabbing all this random stuff that has nothing to do with his plan. I'm just like, why are we doing a scene like this? This is such a waste of time. But after watching it a second time, I no longer felt that way. Beautiful to look at, exactly what you would want to see with these characters. All these years later, more than a decade later, it still works. These characters still feel the same way. It definitely doesn't feel like the writer has lost touch of what the show was. Great stuff. Favorite anime movie of the year. Next up, we have Knives Out. This was a very fun whodunit murder mystery. And what I love about this movie so much is it actually gives you answers on certain parts of this mystery a lot sooner than you would think it would. Because of that, it doesn't feel like it's dragging anything out at all. Like, there's just constant reveals in this movie, and the story keeps moving so quickly. It's very well shot. It has an outstanding cast. And it's just a story that keeps going, and has so much energy in it. And even though a lot of the reveals, in my opinion, are obvious, there are a lot of cases where it subverted my expectations. One of the biggest ones just being how quickly they reveal a big piece of information that I thought we weren't going to get until the very end of the movie. But instead, we get like a quarter through the movie. And then you just get to see things spiral out of control from there. There's so many great scenes, so many memorable lines, so many memorable characters. It's one of my favorites of the year, not top 10 worthy, but close. And now we are on to the top 10. At number 10, we have The Irishman. This is a movie that I really just love the dialogue in it. When it comes to cinematography, it's definitely not poorly shot. There's some really cool cinematography in it, but it's kind of like this brownish look throughout the whole movie. If I associate a color with this movie, it's brown. Just like these offices, these dinners where everything's just kind of darkly lit. And none of it looks bad. All of it fits the tone perfectly. But I think what I really do love about this movie is just the performances with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino. Especially Al Pacino with his Jimmy Hoffa, just making him the most obnoxious fucking person ever. But still kind of the one who has it right, still kind of the one who doesn't let his guard down and lives the life that he wants to live, instead of, you know, being miserable but living longer, which is something that Robert De Niro does throughout the entire movie. Completely loses the respect of any of his family members. They're all actually terrified of him. He didn't want to do something harder for a potential better future like Jimmy Hoffa did in this movie. And that's what's so interesting about me, even though Jimmy Hoffa is just such an irritating person all the way through. I love the line where he's just yelling at his men, and then he says something, pauses, and then he says it again with just the most devastated, frustrated voice imaginable.
You let him sell insurance to his fucking father's... To his fucking father's... To his fucking father's locals! Damn it!
That cracks me up so much in like the most horrible way possible. Definitely gonna have to add a spoiler tag to this one. The scene where Jimmy Hoffa is about to be killed, which if you know anything about what actually happened, you would probably assume this is gonna happen in the movie. But the scene where Jimmy Hoffa gets killed, it's like a 10-15 minute sequence of them just driving back and forth to different places, and they go up into this house, and it is just the most tense thing I've seen all year. I will say, I'm not completely sold on how they de-aged the 3 characters. I think there's scenes where their makeup looks a little weird. I know a lot of it was digital too, but makeup definitely played its part in this movie. There was just scenes where I wasn't really convinced that they were the age they were supposed to be, but I will admit they do look younger in some scenes and older in some scenes, and it's clearly very well done. It just looked off in a couple of different parts to me. And I'll acknowledge what everyone else has acknowledged too. Fucking Robert De Niro, like, beating that guy up. That looked like an old guy trying to kick at someone. Fucking Mike in Better Call Saul just had a fight scene that actually looked fucking convincing, you know, and he actually, to be fair, he's supposed to be old in that show, where in this they were trying to make Robert De Niro look like an old young man. But yeah, that to me is very glaring in The Irishman. Still a great movie. At number 9, we have The Lighthouse. A lot of people would put this movie a lot higher up, and part of me wants to, because I think objectively this is probably the best shot movie of the year. Maybe second place. I'm a little skeptical on that, but the way it's lit and the way it's shot, they have scenes, so many scenes of Robert Pattinson just doing chores, but because of how great everything looks, you get through it and it's not boring to watch. I felt the same way about Roma. I talked about that in the first episode of Review Everything, but it's like, even though I love the way Roma's shot, I said, like, that's kind of a way it compensates for the slow pace. This movie didn't feel slow to me at all. It is a slow movie. It's definitely a slow-paced movie, but I just got through it so much easier than I did with something like Roma, because just how great it looks. And considering that there's, like, no color to the movie and the aspect ratio they go with, that really is saying a lot. That's like a crutch that the movie immediately gives itself, but then they get to do so much great stuff with it. I think with black and white movies, you're able to do a lot of unique things with the lighting that you can't do in a color film, and I think that is what makes this movie stand out so much in so many different scenes. Like the scenes up at the, like, top of the lighthouse with the light just shining on William Dafoe's character, those look awesome. Robert Pattinson is really good in this movie. William Dafoe should have won Best Actor. I would have taken him over Adam Sandler getting a nomination. I would have taken him over Joaquin Phoenix winning. Both of which were two people I would have also liked to see win the Oscar, and I was happy that Joaquin Phoenix won, but damn, William Dafoe got snubbed there. Damn, William Dafoe deserved it. Because his character is just so fucking enjoyable in this movie. He's funny, and he's also a little terrifying, and it's great. And the expressions on this guy is just, it's something that's printed into your head after you watch it. It is such a good performance. The only reason it's not ranked higher, and I don't think I need to keep justifying this because it's my top 10, I love these movies, that's the bottom line, but it's just, I don't know what I got out of it yet. And maybe there'll come a time where I rank this movie higher. I watched it, and by the end of it, I didn't really understand what they were going for. I didn't really understand the point of it, so, I watch it again. And then I watch YouTube videos on it. And I hear all these really interesting ideas about them potentially being the same person, like all these different theories. And I really like it. I really like it. And it's really interesting. It's really cool, but I just never was able to come to my own conclusion on how I feel about the ending. I kind of just like the story of these two men who don't really care for each other all that much. They have their good moments, but they also have a lot of bad moments. And the tedious work they have to do every day, and how they're isolated from the rest of the world, and just how that slowly takes an impact on their mental health, and it slowly changes who they are. And that's definitely there. That's definitely there. By the end of it, there's so many little extra things thrown in, and I just don't think I fully understand what it's trying to do. And I know, like, the point of art is to interpret it. It's to come to your own conclusion on it. I'm just having a hard time doing that so far, so for now, it's my number 9. I might raise it in the future. It's objectively one of the best movies that came out this year, in my opinion. It's at least as objective as you can get, because if you watch this movie and you say it is the most boring thing that you've ever seen, I feel like at the very least you got to give credit to the performances and the way it's shot and the score and just everything else about it, even if you're not that invested in the characters or the story. But I'm a little stuck, that's all. We'll see. I might actually add a section to review everything where I give updated opinions. I actually have changed my opinion on one movie I've talked about so far, that being BlacKkKlansman, because I actually have a higher opinion of the movie after watching it a second time. But we will get to that one day. I need enough movies to talk about to do an updated opinion list, so Lighthouse will probably be spoken about once more on Review Everything. At number 8, we got Marriage Story. I'm actually looking at my list right now, and I fucked up. Marriage Story wasn't supposed to be there. Yeah, no. No, okay, I got them mixed up. Yeah, number 8 is Lion King, and Marriage Story is actually in dead last because I didn't watch Marriage Story, but there's this scene that people posted on Twitter with the two characters shouting at each other, and I can't deal with the shouting, don't like the shouting, so it's a bad movie. If you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, so many people ambushed this movie without seeing it, and I thought it was the most retarded thing I've ever seen. There's that one guy who threw a fit on YouTube about Parasite, but at least that was one guy who didn't see a movie instead of a group of people who didn't see a movie and wanted to judge it off of a single scene. I mean, I guess in their defense, they did watch one scene of the movie. That pisses me off. I'm sorry. You can watch something and say, yeah, that's not really for me. Like, you can make assumptions, so if off of the material that's out there for you to see, you can watch and like, yeah, I don't like that. That's not for me. That's totally fair. That's totally fair. But if you say this movie sucks because the two characters are yelling, and yelling is such a cheap way to do a performance, and it's not good acting just because you're shouting, you're retarded. Fuck you. That was a little mean. Let's do a nicer one. Maybe just say, it's not for me. Alright? Just say it's not for me. Don't say it's bad when you didn't watch the fucking movie. So, okay, what do I think about this movie? I really love it. I actually talked about it both on Duckcast and in our Oscars 2020 video quite a bit, so I'm probably going to make it quick this time. The performances are amazing. It does a great job making you see one person's side and then the other person's side because the movie is about a divorce. At first, you might be completely siding with Scarlett Johansson's character, but then you see a few more scenes and like, oh, I'm with Adam Driver, and it just makes to a point where it's like they're both in this really shitty situation and you feel bad for both of them. They both have these like really horrible lawyers. Granted, Scarlett Johansson's is like more sympathetic towards her, more good to her client than Adam Driver's is, until at first he has a pretty decent lawyer, and then he actually, a decent person lawyer, and then he gets a lawyer that's better at his job, but has no heart whatsoever. But Scarlett Johansson's lawyer is also, like, pulling a lot of shitty things, and escalating things more than she needs to. So it is a very interesting movie when looking at morality. It's a movie that does not paint things so black and white. Scarlett Johansson's lawyer is a character that does so much for her, but so many horrible things to Adam Driver, so it's understandable to like or dislike her. That's why I actually think it was really great that Laura Dern actually won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. That was a surprise to me. But if Marriage Story deserved to win anything, I actually don't think that's a bad award. I kind of wish Scarlett Johansson would have also won Best Actress, but I didn't really see the other movies that were nominated for that, so I guess I can only assume. One other thing I'll point out that I really love about it is the song Being Alive at the end, sung by Adam Driver. I kind of wish that would have been nominated for Best Song. I just think it's such a meaningful, well-written song, though I don't know if it was written for this movie or it already existed, but I've actually listened to that a couple times. Adam Driver doesn't have an especially great singing voice. At least I don't think he does, but it still works very well in that scene, and it's still enjoyable to listen to him sing that song. The song speaks a lot of truth, and it definitely connected with me in a lot of ways. And it's something I've been listening to every once in a while. The score's also really good. Randy Newman did an outstanding job. It's kind of interesting to see him be the composer of the Toy Story movies, and now he's doing it for this movie about divorce. He's actually done a lot of Noah Baumbach's movies too. There was the one with Adam Sandler that I keep forgetting how to pronounce the fucking name of. He scored that movie too, and he did a great job, and he wrote songs for both of them, and they're great. Randy Newman's a talented guy. It's just easy to make fun of some of the shit he's done. Even his song in the Adam Sandler movie is pretty silly, but I like it. I think there's a charm to Randy Newman. I'll give Randy Newman some credit. At number 7, we have JoJo Rabbit. This movie went from not even being in my top 10 and just slowly made its way back up because I rewatched it. I had other family members watch it. We've all been talking about it. It's just like the more and more I think about it, the more and more I love it. It has such a complex issue to take on, and it does it so tastefully while also having a sense of humor. It's a Nazi Holocaust movie that's also a comedy and comes from the perspective of a German boy who considers himself a Nazi, and he is our protagonist. And it does all of that without being offensive or tasteless. It takes a look at a side that a lot of people don't want to be sympathetic towards. And, it's not really taking a sympathetic side of the Nazis, it's just taking a sympathetic side of the people who were put into a really shitty situation, and some of which were brainwashed by the world around them. I love the way that Adolf Hitler is like this boy's imaginary friend, and at first he's actually this charming character who's giving him advice and comparing him to the mighty rabbit when people are making fun of him, calling him JoJo Rabbit. He talks about how great the rabbit is, and it's like this charming speech. And he's just like kind of this goofy character that follows him around. And then as the movie continues and this boy like starts to open his mind up a little bit more and sees how this is not a good person and he is not on the right side, Hitler just becomes the most pathetic fucking human being. He's like spying on him. He's getting nervous. You're hanging out with that girl a lot. At the very end, I won't even say what happens. Just his final scene's incredible. It does it all while being well shot and having a lot of great performances and a lot of great, like the score is also pretty good. The song selection is great. Them using a Beatles song at the opening, as the opening was very clever. It has like several meanings to it too. One, the like singing the song "I Want to Hold Your Hand" while showing the people do like the Nazi salute. Gotta be careful there. Can't do that. Can't do that. Someone will use it against me. But the other meaning behind it is just he was like the Beatles of Germany almost. Like a lot of girls were screaming for him. A lot of people really loved and respected the guy. And people just lost their shit when he was around, just like the Beatles. It's very clever. I was amazed by this movie because I thought I would enjoy it, but I didn't think I'd enjoy it this much. My only critique is it is Wes Anderson-esque with the way it's shot, and I'm not saying he was trying to steal from Wes Anderson, but I would not be surprised if he was inspired by Wes Anderson, and that's not what I'm critiquing. It's not nearly as good as a Wes Anderson movie, that's all I'm saying. If you're gonna try to like do something similar with someone else's style, I will have to say, like, this isn't even, like, close to what he pulled off in, like, Grand Budapest or what he seems like he's about to pull off with this next movie, just from the trailer alone. That's a weird critique, because I do think this movie is its own thing. I'm just saying, if you really want to make the Wes Anderson comparison, I see it, but it's just kind of watered down Wes Anderson. I don't know, maybe that's more of a critique of the people saying that than the movie itself. It's not, like, it's definitely a well-shot movie. It definitely looks great. And the war scene at the end, there's definitely a lot of stuff in there that looked very practical, and I was very impressed with that. But, yeah, it's not Wes Anderson good. Uncut Gems. The style of this movie can make it for you or ruin it for you, because it is absolutely batshit insane. There are so many shots that are just done, like so many different takes and shots that are done. There's like zoom-ins, close-ups, and it just adds like a cluttered feel to every single shot, making you feel very claustrophobic. It also has like just so much sound build-up. You'll hear one character talk, another one start talking, like, and then there'll be a bunch of sounds going on in the background, and it all just builds up in each scene. Like a scene might start off quiet, but very quickly, just the chaos around this main character grows more and more and more and more. You have Adam Sandler as the main character, and his character's kind of a scumbag, but you also kind of sympathize with him because he's going through all this horrible shit, and it's just, his life isn't getting any better by the second, it's just getting worse. And then you have this ending where it's just like all of this building up, all this stress, it's just like a sense of dread coming, and then the ending confirms it. He gets a happy end, and then it's immediately taken away from him. Though I have heard the theory and the idea that the ending is a happy ending for him. And the reason for that is he's a character who has a gambling issue, continuously makes mistakes. You want to punch this guy in the face because of how often he's like out of trouble and then immediately puts himself back into trouble. And you get the idea that even though he has this big victory at the end, he's going to find a way to fuck it up. He's definitely going to find a way to fuck it up. So him being taken from the world before he can do that, and while he's still happy and has a smile on his face, maybe that's about as good as an ending he could get. That's fucked up, but I like that idea of looking at it. Obviously, if he had the choice, he would choose to be alive and lose the money, or have something else happen to him. Die happy, I guess. And I also love the score. I just gotta say that too. The score, it's not necessarily a score that you're gonna like go home and listen to. It's not catchy, but it fits the movie so well, and it just creates such a unique feel for this movie, and it was so great seeing this in theaters. I'm glad that, like, some of these I did not see in theaters, like Lighthouse didn't see in theaters, JoJo Rabbit didn't see in theaters, The Irishman didn't really even have the chance to see in theaters. This one I got to see in theaters, and those trippy sequences where they went for the gems, or just like hearing that soundtrack play on the big speakers there, that was a great experience. This is a movie that I definitely feel you should see in cinemas if you have the chance. Now I understand it's like come to DVD or it's on some streaming services, but if you ever get a chance to, I'd say go for it, or get some really good speakers for your house. Great movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. For a while, this was like my #1 movie of the year, and it's like, I understand why for some people it's one of the lesser Quentin Tarantino movies. I actually think it might be like third for me. I would say that Pulp Fiction and The Hateful Eight are kind of tied for first, And then this would be a third place. Granted, I still need to see Kill Bill, so that's a pretty big one that I haven't seen yet. But I just really loved watching this movie. It's a great character movie. I love every single interaction amongst these characters. It's funny. It's also kind of heartwarming. It's also kind of heartbreaking, some of the stuff they cover in this. Going into it with no historical context, I can understand how some of it won't do as much for you as it will do for other people. I was familiar with what was going on by the end of it, but there's this shot where they like focused on the street sign, and with the way they did it when I was watching this, I was like, I know there's some significance here. I know there's a reason that they're presenting the way that they shot this. They're presenting it like this for a reason. I was not aware of the street name where the event at hand happened, though. I kind of thought that was going to happen because Sharon Tate was in the movie. And then I learned that, and the second time around, it was a lot more enjoyable to watch. I actually researched quite a bit about the movie before watching it a second time, and it was even better on the second watch. Ralph fucking Seppi already mentioned this in his review, and I was going to mention it. I love the fucking use of the Rolling Stones song, Baby, You're Out of Time. It has so much significance in the scene it's being used in, both with Leonardo DiCaprio's career, like where it's going, how he's kind of like a has-been, how his friendship with this one character might be coming near its end, and then just the dread that you kind of know what's coming for Sharon Tate. And then the ending is fucking incredible. It is one of the best scenes from anything that came out in 2019, in my opinion. And I loved every single second of it. And, you know, I understand that, like, the stakes might be a little higher in some of his other movies, like Pulp Fiction, The Hateful Eight, Inglourious Bastards. I just think that the characters in this movie are some of the most charismatic ones. Which there's irony there in me liking them a lot more than some of the other characters. Because some of the characters in Tarantino's other movies had reasons for being assholes, had reasons for being shitty people. But these two people, like, are kind of living a sweet life, and they're just complaining about, like, little things. A lot of their problems really feel like first world problems, especially when you have Sharon Tate in the fucking movie. But I just can't help it. Cliff may or may not have murdered his wife, and he is the most likable character in the movie. And then, of course, you have Sharon Tate, who actually represents a more ideal way of looking at Hollywood, a more ideal way of looking at a celebrity. She is someone who is able to go see her own movie and just enjoy it and enjoy having the opportunity to be in this and sees the magic in movies. And then you have Leonardo DiCaprio, who's just more worried about himself and less concerned about the art. More concerned about what's best for his career and is afraid of becoming a has-been. And it's not that there's nothing likable to him at all. He's just kind of a man-child. But he's great. He's great. I think Brad Pitt deserved Best Supporting Actor. I think my main pick would have been Al Pacino, but he was not a bad choice, and I was not unhappy that he won. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a great movie, and it's something that delivers on additional things when you rewatch it. And just for some of the stuff I've gotten out of my rewatches and just how much I like every single character in the movie, it does make it one of my favorites when it comes to Tarantino's movies. And number 4, we have Climax. This one's debatable. Again, this isn't like a real top 10. This is just me talking about movies and making it 2019 themed. Climax is a really unique horror movie. And the idea of the movie doesn't even sound like anything that complex. It's just a bunch of people go to a party, someone spikes the punch, and craziness ensues. But the way that they portray being on drugs and all this horrifying shit happening around you, it feels very familiar to me. And it definitely fucked with me a lot while I was watching it. It was definitely a great ride while I was watching it. I've never experienced anything like that at all. But I've taken stuff before, and I started having panic attacks, and I started freaking out. Now, luckily, I was in a safe environment when I did this, and I don't do it anymore. But when I did it, I would often, just like the littlest things would set me off, and I would be afraid of horrifying stuff like what's happening in this movie to happen. Your head can go in a really bad place really fast. And technically, this could have been a safe place. They're in this nice place, they have food, they have water, everyone will be fine, they just have to wait it off. But unfortunately, you got all types of different people here. A lot of them already have issues with each other, a lot of them are having a good time with the reaction they're getting, and a lot of them are horrified and are trying to find the person responsible for spiking the punch. And there's a fucking kid there. And that's when all of your worst fears when in a position like this actually come true. And the stuff that happens in this movie is horrifying. It actually does create the nightmare situation that you never want to happen when you're in a state of panic like this. and it does it with like these really long shots where everything is just perfectly executed with what the actors are doing in each shot, with the camera movement, with the sets, with the light, and with everything. The whole thing looks great. There are scenes in this movie that go on for fucking ever, but it's just, there's just this panic going throughout the entire thing that keeps you invested. Even during the slower parts of the movie, there's just this panic that keeps you invested the entire time. And a lot of it just keeps you invested because of how good it looks. Like, there's this dance sequence that's just a single shot, aerial shot, and you see all these people pulling off crazy stuff. But not only are you watching dances from an angle that you normally wouldn't see them at, which is interesting, they just do really crazy stuff with their body, and it's just fascinating to look at. It's actually interesting to look at, and I think the scene goes on for like 10 minutes, but you don't need anything else. You're just hooked into it. It's just a movie. Again, it's like an experience. It's like a little trip that you're going on yourself, and you just get so drawn in by everything happening, even if like the only thing you're experiencing at a specific moment in time is just, this looks cool. It really gets your attention. I think my only complaint with this movie is one scene where it just cuts to a bunch of different shots of two people talking at a time. Like, shot of two people, they'll say a few things, goes to black for a second, comes back out, two different characters talking, and it goes back and forth, and it does this for like 20 minutes. And I was into it at first, but it started getting old, and I was like, I knew what this movie was about. It's just like, let the good stuff start. This is getting old. And it's kind of giving you necessary information to understand the characters and the scenes and what they're about to do. But I don't think all of that was needed. I think that could have been cut down a little bit. I would have even taken another 5 minutes of dancing just to cut that down, you know? Aside from that, this is an excellent movie that, despite how fucking horrified it made me while watching it, I am looking forward to watching a second time. The only other movie I've seen from the director so far is Enter the Void, which is another terrifying movie. I think I might like this more than Enter the Void. I don't know that for sure, because Enter the Void is also really great. I don't know, though, because Enter the Void is like, I think the story's more interesting. I just feel like the craft is so perfected in this movie, and just like the style of it is so good, and actually better than Enter the Void. Enter the Void does have like higher stakes, though, and has more interesting stuff going on, so it's up for debate really what you're looking for, I guess. At number 3, we have Midsommar. A lot of people thought this was a really boring movie, and I couldn't disagree more. It's, again, slow-paced, but a lot of these movies I've talked about very high up on the list have also been slow-paced. Lighthouse, Climax. I think that the opening scene is so dreadful with what happens that it sets this tone for the rest of the movie, where you're just disturbed and you're invested, and the whole thing looks outstanding, and there's so much detail with the cinematography and so many creepy things that they throw in that I didn't even notice the first time I watched this movie. The fucking faces they have on the plants in the background, and the meaning, that the way that they connect to the stuff in the movie, terrifying. It's just like something that was looking over you the first time you watched this movie that you didn't even notice. There was something looking directly at you that you completely missed. It's like you're being watched as you're watching this movie. I think the way that they wrote the kind of like the douchebag boyfriend in this movie was one of the most realistic adaptations of that I've ever seen. Because he's not a complete prick, and he's kind of trying to sell himself as a nice person to his girlfriend, even though he's kind of looking to end their relationship. But he's just like such a real person. Like, such a person that I fucking met in my life, where you can see the fun side of this person, you can see why people would like him, but then when something goes against what he wants, or he sees an opportunity that he wants to take, he stops caring about other people. Like, the one friend is writing a report on all of this, and then he decides he wants to write it on it too, and he goes up to the guy saying, hey, he tries to be nice about it, you know, like, hey, I understand you're working on this, but I just want to let you know up front so you don't find out later I'm doing it too. And he says, no, I've been putting tons of time to this. You've seen me. You've heard me talk about it. You know I was doing this. And I want to do this. Says, dude, I'm just going to do it too. I just want to be honest. He's trying to be a fucking nice guy about like openly admitting that he's fucking his friend over. Oh my god. It just made me hate this guy so fucking much. He doesn't deserve what happens to him, but it made me hate him so fucking much. But it's just such a realistic person. It's like such a not cliche way to write that kind of character. The main character experiences something so traumatizing that you can completely understand why she would like stick around at this place as long as she does, and why she would embrace it by the end. And even at the end, you know, you don't know if she's going to snap out of it or not. She hasn't been part of this cult very long. but you kind of get the idea of how some people would get involved with this. Like, I'm sure similar stories have happened to real people before involving cults. Probably not this, like, you know, word for word, but something similar. It's believable to me, too, that places like this could exist in the world. I genuinely feel like this was an underrated movie. I haven't seen Hereditary yet, and I understand if I watch that, maybe my opinion could have been changed a little bit on this. Heard a lot of word of just like the opening scene's really good and then the rest of it's just build up with nothing happening, and I think a lot happens. I just don't see that. It is slow-paced, and I've become more and more okay with slow-paced as time goes by, but I don't think the people who are criticizing it are criticizing it for being slow-paced. I just think that it didn't do anything for them, and that's fine. I'm not trying. I sometimes call out other reviews I saw or other people who talked about it, and I just say it as a way to disagree, not to say that they're wrong and I'm right. It was surprising with me with Midsommar, because I watched it, and then when I saw like Critical's review and Your Movie Sucks review, Critical's review was a lot more negative than Your Movie Sucks. It was just like, wow, we got something completely different out of this. Very creepy movie, very well shot movie. The score is excellent. I love the fucking, I feel bad for saying I love this. The track, I think it's just called Gassed, and if you've seen the movie, you probably know what part of the movie that part of the soundtrack goes to. It's very unsettling, very terrifying. There's so much energy behind it. There's so much aggression behind it. It's just a movie of feeling horrible things as you watch it. It is a movie that made me feel sick to my stomach while watching, and I loved every second of it. Can't wait to watch it a third time. At number 2, we have Under the Silver Lake. So this one is also 2018, and it should have been released in the United States in 2018. But I guess A24 kind of screwed the pooch on that one. They kind of screwed over a lot of pooches in this movie too, if you know what I'm saying. They killed the dogs. They don't fuck them. That's JoJo Rabbit. This movie is basically about a guy who has all these crazy conspiracy theories, and what makes him different from other people is that every crazy thing he writes on the paper and every single crazy connection he makes turns out to be 100% true. Right off the bat, it's a movie where the story is moving very fast and the camera work is moving very fast and the locations are moving very fast. This is a movie that has so much fun with the camera, so much fun with the set, so much fun with the characters. It very rarely keeps the camera in the same place. The apartment our main character lives in, that is the only location I remember seeing more than one time. He's just constantly going over the place, living his life, trying to enjoy it, but also trying to uncover these horrible secrets of what's happening, what happened to a girl that went missing that he hung out with for one night, just kind of immediately showing you what his personality's like. He's just kind of a creepy dude, and he's insane, thinking of all this crazy stuff, and in any, like, realistic scenario, not a single thing that he wrote down or connected to when, like, trying to uncover this big conspiracy would have meant anything. But I don't think the movie is supposed to be a delusion either. I think it's just like the story is very fictional and it's nothing like this would ever happen, but it's real within the context of the film. I don't think it's all he just imagined it story. I just think it's a fictional universe that's similar to ours, but does have things to say that connect to our world. The one scene with the guy who plays the piano and apparently like wrote half of the popular music in the world, and he's just playing all these different songs, and you the audience member recognizes every single one of them because they're all popular. It's both old music and new music. This guy's really old, and he's just talking to this guy, and it's this really disturbing conversation that just ends terribly. There's just so much to that scene. It's funny, it's disturbing, it's gory, and just the dialogue in it. God, it's just such a great moment. It is one of my favorite scenes in film ever now. And another thing that I really love about it is just there is this big mystery that he's able to uncover by the end, which is ridiculous. But there's also these little things going on around him that never get closure. There's just so much going on around him that never get closure. It's a movie that has a lot to say, in my opinion, and it's something that I think will be benefited greatly by several rewatches, and I'm very much looking forward to that. It's just a movie that did a lot for me. It's very funny. The camera work is incredible. The performance is really good. It's a 9 out of 10 for now, and it might be a 10 out of 10 eventually. I just need rewatches, basically. Special thanks to Matt Presents for recommending this one to me, because I probably would have missed it without his recommendation. And at number 1, we have Parasite. I really loved it. This movie, like, people wouldn't shut the hell up about Parasite in the film community. I don't know anyone personally that told me about Parasite, but every single reviewer I watched, just Parasite, kept getting brought up.
And you can definitely see that it's had quite an impact in the US. It's a foreign film that probably got more attention in America than I've seen in a long time. The only other movies I ever see get this much attention over here is like anime films, like the My Hero movies or stuff like that. What's so great about this movie is you have these two families, both of which have like pretty bad qualities, but neither of them are like bad people. All of the characters in this movie are likable and you can kind of sympathize with them a little bit. You got this rich family that, you know, kind of think lower of these people that they hired to help them. At least the father does. Then you have this poorer family. All of them are very likable. All of them are there for each other. They're a good family. But they are taking advantage of these people, which are rich people, so maybe you don't feel as bad for them, and they all get jobs in their house. But they do screw over people who are actually less fortunate than them in the process. And they're manipulators and they're liars, so yeah, very flawed people. And you watch this movie and you watch the two families engage, and I just like movies that can do that. They don't have like a concrete villain or anything. It's just showing the good qualities and bad qualities to people. About 3 years ago now, Jesus, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri came out, and that's another movie I love for that very same reason. There's characters with some really, really ugly qualities to them. In fact, I think pretty much just about every single one of them has a negative quality. But the movie isn't really painting any of them as just monsters either, except for like one guy. But I like movies that can show that people are complicated. They're not necessarily good or evil. They can just do good things and do bad things. The set design is great. You have this house that's flooded near the end of it. The house that the rich family looks at is very unique and stands out. And it's also a movie that keeps the story moving constantly. There are points where you kind of start to figure out where the movie's going and you start to get ideas of where it might end or what it's going to lead to. And that throws something at you that you couldn't have seen coming from inches away. That makes this movie not feel slow at any point. The entire thing looks great. The casting is great. So yeah, it's my favorite one. And it's a little hard to say because I would say the competition this year was great. 2017 was a really great year for movies. 2018 I actually thought was kind of lame. There wasn't like, there's no good movies. There's good movies every single year. But I just found them a little harder to find that year. This year, there was just so much shit being thrown at me constantly. Like, this is great, this is great, this is great, this is great. And yeah, it made making this list very hard. And I could imagine this list kind of going out of order a little bit at times. Like, Under the Silver Lake, I don't think Parasite is like significantly better than Under the Silver Lake. I think it's a little bit more straightforward and more appealing to a wider demographic of people than Under the Silver Lake. But really, just about everything on this top 10 is something that I would call a great movie. And a lot of the stuff I listed before, it was pretty great too, especially Lion King. So yeah, I think that even though I'd like to go on a more poetic exit when talking about Parasite, the number 1 pick, I think I'm just kind of done talking about them now. I've been focused on 2019 movies all throughout 2020, just trying to catch up and finally do this video, and now it's like March. It's March 8th, I think, when I'm recording this, and I just want to stop. So I'm going to stop, okay? But great year for movies. I hope 2020 can beat it. So far, in 2020, I've only seen 2 movies from this year, and both of them were Sonic related. So yeah, let's just do my 2020 video right now. At number 2, we have the Sonic live action movie. It was okay. And at number 1, we have Sonic Rebuilt. And it's just the 3 GI guys. They made a Sonic movie instead of they redid the Sonic anime movie instead of Shrek. And my co-host is throwing a temper tantrum right now. And that was good. Sonic Rebuilt. So I'm not going to do this again next year. I probably will. I don't know. I might put it into 2 parts next year. This is a lot. I might just do. I don't know. Maybe I should just do what YMS does and do it in a few years. I'm done talking about movies this year. Go home. I don't want to think about 2019 for at least a decade.